treating this as a puzzle. I want to see if I can figure out what this zip file actually contains and what it's going to do, because there's no way that it's, a real bill or anything like that. This is probably going to open a web page to something and spam the browser with a whole bunch of junk if it's not a virus. Most likely it's advertising. Usually it's advertising spam mail these days. Okay, so it's a single JavaScript file. So I'm just going to paste the code into here. And the first step I'm going to do is try to cut this file down, noticing that this is the tail end of a comment, and the top end of this is somewhere up at the beginning. That's a fair bit better. Okay, let's get rid of some more comment material here. Notice a tricky little thing they're doing here is inserting comments in the actual execution parts. So when those comments get removed, it becomes process code. Well, that was easy, because they're using the same one in multiple places. Okay, these are conditional comments, meaning that it's JavaScript that will execute if an environment exists in a certain way. In this case, this is basically saying if this is a Windows machine, then do whatever is inside here. So, if we're attacking a Windows machine, let's see what it is. If this was opened on Linux, nothing would happen. Okay, comments are gone, and conditional coding is gone. So that would now just format here. Okay, I'm going to take a few minutes here to simply reformat everything so that it's got a nice indentation look to it, and ifs and function statements are nicely formatted. I'll probably fast forward through this section. Okay, just had to double check and fix some things there. Okay, so my next step is to kind of continue the formatting by bringing all of the code that's in the main scope to the beginning, and then putting the functions at the end that are not actually executed in scope. So this will give me the linearity of the code actually being executed. Now this section here has brackets around it, but that actually is called within the same. That's the main scope. The brackets are just clustering. There's no condition around it, so I'm just gonna get rid of those. Okay. So by doing that, we also see now that these functions are actually still just real functions. So still more reorganizing here. Okay, so now I have all of the linear code at the beginning here. Oops. So that's the scope of what's going to be executed. And then everything below here are the functions that get called from those points. Okay, so next procedure is to manually process these strings, such as right here. This is the stepwise concatenation of characters to just make a string. So it's just one more level of obfuscating. Now I could do a search and replace on here, but sometimes there's spaces between them, sometimes there isn't. Sometimes it may also be in the middle of a method of something bigger. I want to just kind of get a chance of seeing that as I'm doing it. Okay, so that looks to be, oh, here's a simple one. Anything concatenated with nothing is just itself. See, this is why I didn't want to do a search and replace right here. This code says to reverse the letters in this string. So what this will give us is that, which simplifies. Same with these. These say split between nothings, reverse it, and join it with nothings. So it's just basically reversing the strings. things they'll go through to prevent systems to find keywords that are vulnerabilities to look for. So, next step is to look at some of these complicated math expressions that usually simply are ways of getting something to return a 0 or a 1 or something. So, 1 times 1, that is 2. 2 plus 0 times 1, 2. 1 times 0, 1. That's 125. Plus 15 is 140. 2 times 2, so less than 4. 1. That is 2. Minus 2 is 0. That's just 2. A variable times itself as the new value for the variable. That's basically not even changing anything. However, if it's actually calling code, it will call itself there. So maybe just for right now, I will leave that in place, but just make a comment here to myself. We'll see about that in time. Okay, so that's cleaned up a bit. Time for the next step. Do a very quick little look at another similar, attached to JavaScript. Is a lot different. It's a more interesting one, actually. It's very all one line. But look at this code. Line after line after line. 1,000, almost 1,500 lines of code that almost every line is wrapped in an if. But here's the trick. Okay, if it's true, then use this. Otherwise, if it's false, don't use it. Well, length of this is 4. That is not the true evaluation of that expression. So that one becomes gone. What about the index of this content? Well, that's going to be 0. So that means this whole code does get used. And that's how these get processed. What is the cos of 1? Is it greater than 0? What is the value of this? A cosine. So you gotta actually do the math. A sine. A sine is the equivalent of, But yeah, look at it. Everything is pretty much wrapped in mathematical terms. Some of these are a little bit easier. Hey, is this number that number? No. So that whole section goes. Does this string not equal the other string? You betcha. So then we get rid of this part, So this one would require going through and evaluating a lot of expressions. But what I would do for it first is just simply go through and evaluate every single one of these expressions like this. One of these days, spend some time, clean all those things out. It'll be interesting to see what the actual code is with all those ifs eliminated, and then start processing through that.